The purpose of this presentation is to look at some of the items, some of the vessels that are used during a celebration of exposition, adoration, benediction, or even 40 hours devotion. One of the things, of course, we refer to as the Blessed Sacrament. That, of course, is a host that is consecrated at Mass, placed in the tabernacle, but brought out for exposition, adoration, benediction, 40 hours devotion. For the sake of this presentation, I simply have an unconsecrated piece of bread. But the bread then, the consecrated host, the Blessed Sacrament, is then placed in what is called a luna. A luna is a glass container. It's glass on both sides. It is opened up. And the consecrated host, or the Blessed Sacrament, is placed in the luna. So it looks like this. Once the luna is taken from the tabernacle, it's placed in another vessel that we call the monstrance. This is the monstrance. There is a glass window on both sides of this as well. The back is opened, and the luna is slid into the monstrance for the faithful to be able to see, to come, to worship, to pray. Now, if you look at the monstrance itself, they vary in style. They can vary from church to church and so on. The purpose of the monstrance is basically to contain the Blessed Sacrament, obviously, but to uplift our minds now that we're entering into God's world. On our monstrance, we see figures of saints and angels. Again, it's this idea that God has come down from heaven now, Jesus Christ, to be with his faithful. Now, with some monstrance, they look like sunburst, rays of sun emanating from the Blessed Sacrament. And there's beautiful significance to that. Some see it as signifying now that Jesus has come down and his love and his grace are permeating out to the people that have gathered here to adore and to worship him. And what a beautiful image that is, to come now in the presence of Jesus Christ, to simply open ourselves now to the power of his action, and to allow his grace, his mercy, and love to simply come down and shower himself upon us. Beautiful image, powerful during exposition and adoration. Some instances then, when we're talking about simple exposition and adoration, the Blessed Sacrament, the monstrance, is simply placed directly on the altar, and people come to worship and pray. When there is a more elaborate celebration, such as 40 hours, many times the monstrance then is placed on another vessel, which is called the tabor. Some refer to it as a throne. And I like that idea, that now Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, has come among us, and now he sits upon his throne to be with us. When we look again to the Scriptures, we see there is that rich image. We're told, of course, in the Gospel of Matthew, the angel Gabriel said, that Jesus has come now to take the throne of David, his father, to sit on David's throne. When we look at the book of Revelation, it says that the just will sit with Jesus on his throne, the throne that he shares with God the Father. So we have this beautiful image of Jesus sitting on his throne. And I think the tabor makes a good example of that idea of the throne. We're in the presence of our Lord of Lords, King of Kings. Another thing that is often used with exposition, adoration, 40 hours devotion, is, of course, incense. Incense itself is contained in what is called a boat. Incense is basically resins. There's also some oils, some fragrance, perhaps some dried flowers, and so on, put together to create what we call incense. It gives it its fragrant smell, and it's contained in what we call a boat, and this is the boat. Now, the incense then is placed in what is called a thurible. This is the thurible. So inside this we place charcoal. On the charcoal then that is hot, sort of the charcoal that you would find in your grills if you grill at home, that is lit, placed in here. And then the incense is placed upon the heart charcoal, giving up that smoke rising up to heaven. Now, when you look at incense, there's a rich history of this. First of all, we can go again to the Old Testament. We're told that when the individuals offered up sacrifice to God, that they would offer up a lamb, a goat, a bullock, or what have you. They would set that on fire, and the smoke would rise up to heaven. It was an indication of their sacrifice, their prayers rising up to God. We go to Jerusalem, to the temple in Jerusalem. We said there was an altar of incense. The high priest would go in to put incense in there. It was a sign again of reverence in the Holy of Holies, the presence of God there. So it was a sign of respect, of reverence to God, and that there is the holy sense there as incense was used. Now, what I would like to look at it in a sense that we use it here, of course, as I said, for benediction, 40 hours devotion. We use it during Mass. What is the purpose of incense here? Well, again, whether it's at Mass or whether it's at the devotions of 40 hours, adoration, benediction, it's again that indication that our prayers are rising up to God, that we're offering ourselves, particularly at Mass, with the sacrifice being offered, and is being raised up to God our Father. But I think incense also brings about the sense of mystery. We go back to the Old Testament, to the story of Moses on the top of Mount Sinai. It said that this cloud descended and covered the mountaintop, and that Moses and God entered into that cloud. They conversed with each other, were with each other. It brings that sense of heaven and earth, I believe, coming together in worship. We see it in the New Testament, in the story of the Transfiguration. It said that a cloud descended from the heavens and there was a voice heard from the cloud. I think incense, those clouds of smoke, takes us into a different world, into God's world. It's heaven and earth coming now together, God being with us. And we see that, of course, when we have benediction. It is Jesus Christ present with us. Heaven and earth coming together now to be with each other. And that smoke gives that sense of otherness, of otherworldly, of heaven and earth. So what beautiful image it is of incense, a sign of reverence, prayers rising to God, heaven and earth coming together in this beautiful union of prayer and praise, being with God. In fact, you may notice behind me is a mosaic. And I know while I'm a priest here, many people coming into us ask me, what is that mosaic? What is the significance of it? Because when you look at the mosaic, you see these swirls rising up. The mosaic depicts incense. It's a symbol of our prayers, our worship, our sacrifice rising up to God. And what a beautiful image that is. Some other things that are used during benediction, 40 hours devotion, are the vestments that the celebrant wears. One of the vestments that the priest or the celebrant wears is what is called a cope. Now you will notice that this is different than the chasuble that is worn by a priest during the celebration of Mass. The cope extends over the shoulders of the celebrant. And again, the cope is often used in devotions. It can be used, as I said, benediction, be used during 40 hours. We know copes can be used in other celebrations or devotions as well. If you come to, for example, Palm Sunday and there's a procession, many times the celebrant will have a red cope on for Passion Sunday, Palm Sunday. Sometimes with the celebration of the Stations of the Cross, the celebrant may wear a purple coat. Again, it is a vestment that's often used during special devotions. Now, in the context of benediction, the cope is worn. And as I said, when benediction is celebrated, what happens is the Blessed Sacrament, placed on the throne, the tabor, is up on the altar. And when benediction begins, we have a benediction hymn that is sung. Incense again is used. The Blessed Sacrament is incensed. Again, it's a sign of respect, of honor. It's a sign of heaven and earth coming together and our prayers rising up to God. Following the incensation, there is a prayer prayed. And after that prayer is prayed, there is another piece of vestment that is brought, which is called the humeral veil. The humeral veil is a large piece of material like this, and it's placed over the cope, over the shoulders of the celebrant. When that is done, the celebrant will go up to the altar with the humeral veil over him, covering his hands. He will pick up the monstrance and give a blessing to the people. Following the blessing, the benediction, the monstrance is placed back onto the tabor, and the divine praises are recited, giving praise to God. And then, of course, benediction concludes with a closing hymn. So again, having explained all these vessels, the things that are used during exposition, adoration, benediction, 40 hours, hopefully gives us some insight into the understanding of these terms, what their purpose is, and for the ability to have us a greater understanding of it. But what I would like to do in demonstrating all this is to extend that invitation to you, that anytime we have an opportunity for exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, adoration, or such devotions as 40 hours, to make yourself available to it. We can do no better for ourselves than to come into the presence of Jesus Christ, to simply be in the presence of God, and to allow him to pour his love, his grace into our hearts.